I would put music and some audio cues in this intro, but I don't have any. Sorry.
So summer 2017 is still in action, and despite the typical presence of high school dramas, ecchi harem, sports, slice of life anime, and another succession of mono, will this franchise please end already, gatari, it's also been the home of some shows that bear interesting setups and notable developments here and there. Sure, My Hero Academia Season 2 is still going on, though I'm not watching it because I'm not a big My Hero Academia fan, I'm more of a One Punch Man sort of guy. But this is also a season where we have yet another ufotable anime that's apparently mediocre. Not that I'm actually seeing it, where we have a show revolving around a centaur and her time at a high school, where we have a show about dancing, where we have Made in Abyss, probably the most wondrous fantasy anime to come out in a while, that clearly pays its influence to Studio Ghibli, and a school anime about gambling where I actually give a shit about the facial expressions. Oh, there's also something about a Fate adaptation in there as well. It's kind of like Fate Zero, if Fate Zero was made by A1 Pictures. Hey look! A new season of Hellgirl! I've never seen Hellgirl, so I couldn't tell you anything about it. Obviously, Monogatari's gonna have many otaku lined up in droves. They can sell you a box of dirty needles, and it'll still sell if it has Monogatari typed on it. Hero Academia was gonna get mad pussy no matter what came of it. And I'm glad Made in Abyss is getting attention. But there's one show. A show that, though it isn't obscure per se, is overlooked maybe a little more than I think it should, and that would be the Victorian, steampunk, fantasy-themed espionage anime known as Princess Principal, with its moe girls, who wear cute Victorian school dresses that are cute and... Wait, did she just shoot that guy? Okay, one of them is a goddamn ninja. Now there's a car chase. Okay, what is Princess Principal? Well, from the title alone, you may think it's an anime about a princess. Maybe she's the principal of some school? I mean, the name should describe the show, and that should be the premise if the title's the only thing you could work off of. Could be a high school slice of life. Maybe a comedy? Maybe a drama. Maybe an anime set in an alternate history 19th century Europe where a lot of people get killed? In this video, I aim to convince you to give Princess Principal a shot, assuming you haven't seen it already. I won't outright spoil what the show has offered thus far, though I do dig into a few things that may be worth noting. Because out of all the anime from this season that I personally see people talking about on my Twitter feed, from Kakegurui to Fate Apocrypha to Made in Abyss to My Hero Academia 2 to Owari Monogatari and so on, I barely ever see this show pop up, which is a shame, because it's probably my pick to be the underdog of summer 2017. The aspect of Princess Principal that struck me right out of the gate was, without a doubt, the setting. Probably one of the most refreshing in a while. Set in an alternate history Europe in the late 19th century, it's a setting that is both familiar and that the Victorian era is no stranger to media, including anime for that matter. What elevates it isn't only how good everything manages to look. From far-off vistas where stretches of light contrast with ever-present darkness and generates a distinctive atmosphere, the old-time European designs of roads, buildings, decor, machines, and so on providing an ample sense of authenticity to the world itself, to even the surprisingly good animation on offer. What truly sets this Victorian-inspired setting apart would be the backstory that defines both it and the plot on offer, and key inspirations that help give it additional characters such as twists of fantasy, steampunk, and a pinch of sci-fi for good measure. The premise for Princess Principal begins after the discovery of a powerful substance known as cavorite, giving way to advanced scientific and technological breakthroughs, and eventually leads to civil war within, splitting the country into two sides, the Kingdom of Albion and the Commonwealth of Albion, both separated by an expansive wall, clearly inspired by the Berlin Wall, and are on the edge of starting a world war. It's this that the anime frames the plot around, focusing on our aforementioned spy characters who work for the Commonwealth via the school's clubroom they attend, eliminating key targets and assassinations, obtaining important intel, sabotaging enemy plans, or escorting important figures in this ongoing war. Our main characters consist of Angie, a stoic, manipulative, and highly deadly spy with a seemingly magical Cavorite-powered device that allows her to manipulate her own gravity, Dorothy, a 20-year-old spy, undercover as a teenager who tends to favor other methods such as seduction and is the driver of the group, Chisa, a Japanese samurai ninja lolly who kicks a ton of ass with her sword, tasked with observing the conflict as to determine which side her country should side with, and the main cast is finalized with Princess and Beatrice, the former being a princess of the Kingdom of Albion who's secretly working with the Commonwealth, and the latter being her younger aide who serves her and assists on missions thanks to her mechanical implants such as enhanced durability and a voice box that allows her to change her voice as someone else's. Directed by Masaki Tachibana, the same director of Tokyo Magnitude 8.0, and written by Ochiro Okochi, the same writer of Code Geass and Planetes, Princess Principal, when it isn't packing on the action, revels in its setting of ambiguity and inhumanity, albeit without truly losing a sense of humanity. The downbeat mood that occasionally dips into melancholy, the overarching gloom of a world with instability and corruption, the underlying tensions of a war that's on the brink of escalating, fought with information, espionage, and trust that could be easily broken. It's a dramatic setting in one way or another. The first episode probably encapsulates Princess Principal to its core essence. To make a video game analogy, it very much plays the same role a game demo would, starting the story with in medias res, the episode not starting at the beginning of our tale, but sometime within it. It labels itself as the 13th case after all, literally making the 13th episode the first. Indeed, I can say that whether you dig into Princess Principal or not is dependent on how you react to the first episode, more so than others, because unlike most first episodes where they start the story and whatever else the show has going for it can only be seen if you stick with it from beginning to end, almost literally everything, from the premise, tone, action, character dynamics, and other elements that defines the rest of the show, are all packed into its debut, kinda like a one-shot OVA. It gives us the rundown of our setting and gets into the drama and action. By starting at its 13th chronological episode, it's also the introduction of the show's non-linear structure, presenting us with a semi-episodic structure along an overarching plot in an out-of-order fashion. The reason why it decided to take a non-linear approach to a story isn't something I can fully determine as of the writing of this video, but the first episode is notable with how it starts the show before the next episode comes and starts the actual plot. If there's one thing it does accomplish, it's to give almost each ending of an episode a lasting effect, moments after watching. Since most episodes are self-contained without being tied by ordinary continuity, an episode doesn't simply conclude with an ellipses or a to be continued, but rather with a bold period that creates a resonating effect, especially with some of the darker endings. It's one thing to hear a barrage of gunfire over an extended period of time. It's another to hear those gunshots end and have the aftermath echo around the environment, gradually fading. With this premise and structure in mind then, the tightrope Princess Principal walks is one where it can either devolve into uninspired pap or degrade into heavy, unstylized grimness that loses relatability, and it's easy for it to go either way considering what it's about. It doesn't walk this rope with flawlessness, of course. In fact, there are times where the show can cheat maybe a tad and drops bits that border on unearned edginess, but I wouldn't like this show if that's all it had. Fortunately, the show recognizes this dilemma, and instead of focusing its direction on the inherent hopelessness of a world with blood spilt from east to west, it goes for something more character-driven to an extent that sometimes borders on character study. An example of this would be Dorothy and her dark past. As a child, her father lost a hand in some sort of accident, causing him to lose his job, have Dorothy's mother abandon them both, and succumb to alcoholism as a result, abusing her to degrees that led her to run away into the Commonwealth. In a lesser work, she'd be the dark character, the character who's grim and sullen and doesn't believe in anything and is like totally serious, and other tropes associated with characters of her upbringing. She could have been that way, but it's clear early on that she is more nuanced than that. She's more jaded than dark, but that doesn't mean she can't have fun, react in ways a normal person would react in varying situations like feeling embarrassed or opening up to acquaintances about who she is as a person and so forth. Dorothy is not a character affected by her past, but one who's she's risen above it. The fact she reunites with her father in the 6th episode simply reminds her of why she left him in the first place, and as we come to learn, he really isn't as bad a person as we're led to believe, and it explores this. This priority to balance character traits extends to the rest of our cast. You know you're doing a good job when the high-pitched moe comic relief character who would annoy you in any other show manages to be one of your favorite characters on the strength of characterization alone, or when you can feel some sympathy for the plight of a character who is inherently a bad person. Angie fits this bill, being every bit as ruthless in assassinations as she is a generator of lies. And yet, when it comes to her relationship with the princess, a relationship I won't talk further about, it makes it a notable trait than a footnote. On one hand, you want to root for her because of her interactions and genuinely tangible character moments with Princess because of their association and bond, but on the other hand, she's a killing machine in the show's entertaining action sequences because it's her job, and she does it very well. Even Princess has moments that prove she's capable in her own right, if not outright courageous or badass, which subverts what the show initially suggested her to be. A standard princess character. What helps anchor this is some of the show's more intimate, tragic, or uplifting moments never feeling completely hollow, and it does this by adding an underlying sense of remorse or sincerity with each. When a character kills someone who we and the characters themselves knows is a person with history and plights, it's not without some form of sadness or occasional silver lining. Or better yet, the moments that don't involve death at all tend to be driven by some form of accomplishment. It doesn't do this as a gimmick, however. It's a main force of its direction. The line between happiness and tragedy is an explicit one in Princess Principal, so rather than using the two as its only trick, they're thematic guidelines for its overall character-driven narrative. Because this isn't simply an anime about spies. It's an anime about people who are spies. All of this is complemented by Yuki Kajira's score, and yes, Princess Principal is scored by Yuki. I composed Madoka, Fate Zero, Kara no Kyokai, and that one VR video game anime everybody hates for some reason, Kajira. Now, when it comes to Kajira's work, anyone experienced with the brand of sound knows she's prone to repetition, maybe even to the point of phoning it in. Sometimes you get the pretty damn good Madoka Magica Yuki Kajira. Sometimes you'll get the listen to how much shit I can put into one music track Yuki Kajira. Sometimes you'll get I'm phoning it in Yuki Kajira. Admittedly, her work tends to blend together under the most usual of cases, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. But sometimes, on a semi-rare occasion, when the planets align and Movie Bob isn't posting something on Twitter, you'll get the experimental Yuki Kajira, whether from some of the tracks from Madoka Magica Rebellion to Kara no Kyokai. Princess Principal is an oddity then, as far as her work is concerned. It's not in the ballpark of a Madoka, nor is it run-of-the-mill like a Sword Art Online. It isn't bombastic with how many instruments and vocals it has at any one time, but it also isn't afraid to ramp up in the more intense moments after stretches with its understated tracks. It's experimental, but not too experimental. With atmosphere and energetic action in mind, Kajira clearly got the memo. No overblown arrangements and make sure to stick to the theme, though this was probably for the best in this case. From its moodier tracks, to its subtle tracks, to tracks meant to emanate a sense of curiosity, to its action-oriented tracks, Yuki Kajira's score for Princess Principal isn't her best work, but it packs enough nuances and twists in some places to make sure that, of all the ways to describe it, it's at least not an invisible element, succeeding in underscoring every emotional intention just fine. And I guess just fine is also another way of describing it. Could it have used a little more ambition is something I'm not sure about. Then again, Princess Principal isn't really a deep show in the first place, so maybe it didn't need to be. This isn't the first time I've encountered a case like Princess Principal. How many of you saw Sunday Without God when it was new? How many of you saw Kobato when it was new? And to this day, I still don't get why people didn't like Sora no Method. How many of you guys even remember Sora no Method? Each season will have an underdog. It doesn't have to be obscure to be an underdog, and I know Princess Principal isn't an obscure show this season per se, as I previously stated. What it is a show that'll clearly be forgotten once it's over, at least from what I can tell. Like most anime for sure. Except, I don't think what I've seen should be forgotten so quickly. as that would imply that there's nothing unique about it whatsoever. Even with Made in Abyss, Kakegurui, Monogatari, My Hero Academia, and so forth taking space, I think Princess Principal should be talked about more, or at least a little more, for everything it brings to the table. Or maybe it doesn't deserve more attention, more word of mouth, I don't know. I just really like the show from what I've seen of it thus far. As of now, it's a rival with Made in Abyss as my personal favorite anime of summer 2017. Maybe it isn't worth your time. But I said maybe, because if you haven't seen Princess Principal, go ahead. See if it makes a good impression on you. Oh, and the opening is my favorite of the season.
Across the road.